Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. We're going to get the meeting started. If everyone's ready, I know we're running a few minutes behind, and we do apologize for that. We have a quorum in the room. We have Chair DeGiorgio, School Board Member Zeman, Mayor Brunson, and Mayor Levy in the room. We have Mayor Gomez online, ready to start the meeting, and she's driving in. And I understand that Councilmember Horland has texted me that she saw Mayor Levy walking in the building, so she should be right behind him.
Perfect. So I guess we'll call this meeting to order.
Okay, thank you. So
Ms. Blake-Boy.
Thank you. And we do, like I said, have a quorum. Well, thanks everyone. I know it's been a few months since we've had a steering committee conversation. And obviously over the past several months, we've been having a lot of discussions about legislation that was enacted during the last session. But before we get to the business, I just want to mention Happy Bosses Day. We don't usually get to see the Planning Council members on Bosses Day. So since it is, we just wanted to mention that. So I think, Andy and I'll speak for him. What a pleasure it is to work with all of you. So thank you.
We never looked at ourselves as bosses, but
Well, I think it's funny because I basically have, when we have full membership, 20 bosses is, like how you think of it. So that's a lot. So only 17 right now. So we're on the lower end.
Well, while we're wishing happy things, happy birthday to our boss, Barbara Blake-Boy.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
It's the 18th. But we're kind of celebrating in the office today because I'm not in the office on Fridays, and it's nice, and our staff is great. We have all kinds of delicious treats for that. Thank you. But yeah, we're going to the Mai Kai Saturday, so super excited about that.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you. And Councilmember Horland just walked in the room, so perfect timing. So with that, we'll just dive right into the materials. So as we were talking, this is just a quick look at what the order of the agenda is. And, obviously it's in your book also. We'll go through each of these sections. How we've structured this presentation is almost exactly what you saw in April with some notes. So grayed out will be probably we don't need any further discussion today because it's likely less restrictive or burdensome. The colored items we'll need to talk about, have some discussion. They're noted orange, blue, a variety of colors. And then we'll go through, get your comments on that, and then we'll talk about what will happen at the conclusion of this meeting today and kind of our plans from staff's perspective. So the first item in there is your updated framework. That just includes public comments, staff recommendations that the Planning Council's made. That's just an always growing document. So that's included in your materials. And all this information is always posted online also. And it includes the interested parties' comments that we received through earlier this week. So when we get into I think what the real discussion items for today are just a couple of notes and things that Andy and I have been talking about related to Senate Bill 180. And if you're not familiar with Senate Bill 180, good for you.
You're very lucky.
You're so lucky. But if you have been kind of going down the path of the unanticipated impacts of 180 from the final day of the legislative session in May and then signed into law the end of June for an effective date of July 1st, and you have anything to do with local government, you know that this language that was added in near the end of the session or at the end of the session essentially says that there will be no comprehensive plan amendments or code changes that are considered more restrictive or burdensome. And the great thing about it is it's not defined. It's a joke that it's a great thing. It's very unclear. But what we already started seeing in July are anecdotal stories from what was happening to other counties around the state, as well as cities within Broward County. And I just want to share kind of my favorite 3 highlights of what we've seen from 180. And the first party to experience this was Orange County. That was the first letter that kind of got published to everyone that was passed around the state. And Orange County had been working for a couple of years. They had transmitted to the state, I think in 2023. They had their adoption hearing in June of this year. and the state said your plan is null and void, and this is why. And they listed out several policies at the bottom. Well, if you start going back through this couple 1,000-page document and searching those policies, much of it was support materials, you saw that policies that had been in place for over a decade were now deemed more restrictive or burdensome because they readopted their plan in the entirety. So that was our first cue when we started talking about, when we're preparing materials, when we do get to a transmittal hearing, how would they look? And Andy and I, had the agreement that, okay, based on this, we will only be providing strike through and underline to the state. So any policy that's going to continue to exist as it is will not be provided as a package, which is a little bit of a departure from how we would normally operate. But, that means we'll kind of have two sets of documents, one to keep it, in order for us and that. So that was our first kind of anecdotal experience on that. And then some clarifying language. One of them stuck out in my head, which was an FAR 3, and the county added the word minimum, and that was deemed more restrictive, or might have been maximum, but whatever it was a clarifying comment. So then within Broward County, we participate as the planning council. You deem that city plans are at least as restrictive as the county plan. We recertify text and map amendments. And the city of Lighthouse Point had updated their plan finally after years. They're a smaller city. And a letter came back from the state that one of the policies that would have put them in compliance with the Broward County Land Use Plan, which was a policy to strongly encourage the preservation of open space. Yeah. Right, strongly encourage. And that was deemed to be more restrictive or burdensome. So now we're really kind of, now we're in our backyard and realizing. The third anecdotal from Broward County was in the city of Oakland Park. Again, they'd had a provisional certification that was granted by you all, and they had certain things that they needed to update. And one of those was the implementation of school concurrency, which I don't know if you know is a statutorily required policy. And the state deemed that more restrictive or burdensome. So, we've really just kind of been tracking, what's been happening. And I think that the biggest thing is that it's very unclear. But with those kind of anecdotal stories, that's how we put these documents together, was consideration of what we have observed through the state, which is no guarantee that anything that we think could be less restrictive or burdensome, but we try to, differentiate between those. So we just wanted you to understand that.
We tried to take a conservative approach, and because I have a public records request out to try to get all these letters that have gone out. I'm having trouble getting them from the state, and then my firm has filed the lawsuit on behalf of, I think, 27 cities and counties now on the subject. But that's just beginning. But the determination of more burdensome, more restrictive is really it's causing a lot of problems, especially the way they're interpreting it. And the only thing I would note is that when the state adopted the Burt-Harris Act, they used the term undue burden, and they spent 2 paragraphs defining that word. SB 180 says more burdens, more restrictive, and not a word of definition. So we'll have to fend for ourselves. As Barbara said, we have guidance from the way they view it, and so we try to be conservative.
And I'm glad we have that guidance, I mean, in all honesty, because we would have never thought that strongly encourage would be something we couldn't put in the language. So I'm glad we have that, and that's kind of the approach we've taken through what we're about to present today. So, Barb?
And I think just before we start going through the policy section, the last note that I want to talk about is what the good news is in this, because we're going to find the good news. And the good news is that we have a county land use plan that's existed for decades, and the readoption in 2017 really refocused the plan. So we do have a lot of existing policies in support of resiliency planning and, flood planning and open space. So we at least do have, and those policies are going to remain. So I think that that's important to note. And when we get to the end of the presentation and kind of the path forward, we'll talk about policies that we think that we believe should be held in abeyance until there's a kind of a conclusion or change to this legislation, about how we'll note that on our website and for the public to be aware and understand that those things are very important. Resiliency planning is very important to Broward County, and how we're going to try to preserve that message in preparation for the future.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, you may. Councilmember Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Blake Boy, I think I sent you this morning a glitch bill by Senator DeSigli has been filed, which we were hoping, because many of the legislators did not realize when they voted upon this bill the unintended consequences. Will anybody from our staff be interacting with his office and providing some feedback?
So generally, generally the planning council staff doesn't have a direct role in legislation through the county. We work with the county's intergovernmental affairs. They often send us proposed legislation. So what I can do is I can just forward that that's to Marty Cassini
Okay.
and his group, and just say, like that we're supportive, generally supportive of this. I do have also, when we get to the end, a couple of prep legislative things that we've seen for 2026 that I'm a little bit concerned about, that I just wanted to,
Okay.
Briefly share with that too.
And if you can, anything that you send to Marty, if you can share with us, also we'll be having our Broward delegation meeting in, I think, next week or the week after, and also heading up for committee weeks.
Okay.
That we could start to have some of those conversations.
Yeah, so I can just actually forward you what I got as the drafts
That'd be great.
yesterday, which are just kind of one-page summaries.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, may I?
You may. Dr.
Thank you,
King.
sir. You really, you piqued my interest on this. Why don't you participate in the Broward County lobbying effort?
It's not that we don't participate. We don't have the primary role. There's an intergovernmental, agency that manages it for the county, does, sends out during legislative session, each of the summaries so that we can track this, which is why, right, like 180 we weren't on alert of that until the end because it didn't happen until the last day. So every week during session, it wasn't on anyone's radar because this language had been removed and after the initial meeting, and then went back in the day before.
And you
So we
will,
do
but you
see
will
it.
participate as you're requested to
Right,
participate.
we
They will
participate from that perspective, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
it's-
are, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, we're we're in the Broward County Charter, we're really, we have some independent authority, but we're really an agency of Broward County organization, if you look at the organizational chart. So we are the local planning agency, and we prepare the plan for the county commission, but the county commission adopts it. And so we try to be mindful of our position in the county hierarchy, which is supportive of the county commission.
But you and I may have a different opinion about your appropriate hierarchy or the placement in the hierarchy, because it's one thing for the legislature to do something, right? They have every legal right to do what they did on the last day of the session, and we have a year or so of work to get back to make sure that people understand the implications of that. And so I'm glad that you're fully engaged. It just didn't sound like you were from the quick comment. I just wanted to make sure that in fact you are. We participate
No,
in the
we're,
school board.
yeah, there are a number of parties that, as you say, there are two major lawsuits being filed, the Thousand Friends and our lawsuit. Not the planning, I'm sorry, the planning council, not the planning council's lawsuit, but the lawsuit of the 27 counties and cities.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to clarify, Dr. Zeman, that was the way that I phrased it. I wanted to make sure that, and I know that you would go through Marty Cassini, just make sure that we're engaging with them on this new glitch bill. Thank you.
Excellent. Ms. Blake Boy.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Please use your microphone and turn it green. Yep, sorry. Thank you. Otherwise, they won't hear
Welcome,
you.
Mayor. How are you?
It's great to see you all. And so one of the things that occurs to me, and I've been on this committee for a while, but I'm not sure that we've ever really done this, is vote on a legislative agenda as a committee. And if there are particular items that we think we'd like to ramp up to the county commission, that's certainly advice that falls within the purview of the council. Certain things that we might recommend be included in the county's legislative agenda. I would have no objection to that. I couldn't see any of us having an objection to that. If there are particular laws or things that we feel that Tallahassee should do, you have an issue with that? I mean, it seems to me that that's a land use role.
I have a concern with it. I'm not saying, and I certainly, I know there's interest, so I would love to say yes immediately, but I'd like to just take a look at that from the perspective of the charter, what our responsibility is there. I understand what you're saying. You're not talking about property taxes. You're talking about
No. This is limited to land use and consolidated planning and,
I don't think, Andy, I don't think we necessarily need a subcommittee for that. This committee we have right now, if we can direct you to take, get involved with this as it's, as we're taking action here at the county level on behalf of the county, on behalf of the planning council, we can just direct you to follow through with whatever we come up with, correct?
Yes, and if in the discussion there's legislative issues, but I think as a separate, I don't know whether that is the role that was anticipated for us, but I'd be happy if that's something of interest to people. But I think what the chair says is probably the best way to do it rather than setting up a separate legislative committee, because that formalizes a role that starts getting a little.
We're going to have pushback that I don't think we necessarily need to have,
I
because
don't-
I think it is our role for land use. What Mayor Castillo says and what Dr. Zeman says, that is our role. This is something we have to be cognizant of, local planning. So we need to push that forward, and I think we're well within our bounds to do that. I think when we set up what could be considered a different committee, some type of political action committee, something like that, I think we get.
I think the simplest way to go about it is within the county's process for its own legislative agenda. Maybe one stop along the way is any land use impacting legislative agenda items be presented to us as an informational report during a planning council meeting at the appropriate time. And if we have feedback for anything additional, we provide it there, and then that could, be transmitted to the county in the course of its determination of its priorities.
Very straightforward.
I think that's probably the excellent, I think that's,
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Excellent.
then you're in the process. You're not just kind of floating outside.
And I assume
That's
that
exactly that was my concern.
Yeah.
it could be that the county, of course, has some land use type legislative priorities included, even though in the big scheme of things, maybe there are other things that have been
They
more
have
of a
fully
priority.
formed process for it,
Yeah.
and they have a lobbyist to implement it and that type of thing.
Okay. We do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, understood, thank you. So we'll jump into the policy summary. So as I mentioned, this presentation is very similar, almost exactly the same from what you saw in April with these differentiations. So the grayed out, you can see, I don't believe we need to have a continued conversation, but if you have a different opinion, feel free to bring that up. But if you could, if you have an issue with it, I'm not going to go through it. The assumption is if it's grayed out, we've determined that it's likely less restrictive or burdensome, and obviously we use the word likely because it's unknown. If it's still in the black or dark font, then it's something that we have considered that it's likely more restrictive or burdensome, and we need to hold it likely in abeyance, and that's what we'll be talking about. So this first slide, you'll see including the word resiliency added another layer of review for the county. So that was considered to be likely more restrictive or burdensome. So this is, we could consider likely just the removal of the word resiliency and maintain the policy as is. Note we're in the policy section, so it is the third tab. Should be the third tab.
I wouldn't remove it.
You wouldn't remove the word resiliency?
No, let the land use police come get us. And tell us that it's somehow unconstitutional or violative of state law, whatever. I think that you know, as a group, we should, you know, if there's vagary, we should take advantage of the vagary.
Well, just a legal question then, if we
Hold on.
were to, if I may?
I want, Andy, before, did you want to respond real quick?
Well, I'll wait to, if
Okay.
the
Mayor
question,
Levy.
I do want to respond.
Okay, Mayor Levy.
So my question would be, because it's part of how we determine, you know, what we ought to do here, is what is the consequence of having an item that is more burdensome and restrictive in the eyes of the state or in the eyes of an applicant? What are the consequences of not having a complying plan?
So before, Andy, before you respond, I will respond to that because we went through how we're presenting today, and I'll take responsibility for this because I think it's really important that we move forward with what we can move forward on now. We know we're not going to get the whole plan thrown back at us. So we suggested these things. I'm not saying you're wrong, Mayor Castillo. I'm just saying that's the way I asked to move forward with these policies because we've already got an indication what they're going to say when we put the word resiliency in there. And they will throw out the entire plan, whether it's not just that language they'll strike. That's the problem. The whole plan gets thrown out and we go back to the drawing board. So because of that, we're going through it this way. Now, Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I would prefer not to test them just for the purposes of testing them on these things. And you asked what are the consequences. I think it's important to understand the process that we're in. The way it has worked this far is that the state has determined, apart from any authority granted by any statute that I can see, to appoint themselves of the ombudsman in order to enforce SB 180. If you read SB 180, the two sections at question are section 18 and 28 that give the right with regard to more restrictive. No role is set forth for the state in implementing those two sections. The way those two sections read is they are to be enforced by developers. So two things can happen. Is one, the state can continue to do what they are doing, which is just on their own in their regular 163 review, which is for compliance with the state and regional plans, add this other little aspect, and they could declare us null and void, in which we would have a battle with the state, and a developer could put us on notice under the statute, and that's in the statute, that we're in violation, and give us a ridiculously short period of time to amend it. And if we don't, then they can sue, and we are liable for attorney's fees. So, if they want to come up with a determination that there's delay and et cetera and damages, I don't know how they would do that, but the creative attorneys will come up with whatever they can. So, I understand what you're saying, Mayor, but our recommendation is just to be cautious, because what we're going to do is, Barbara, I think it's important, the ones we don't pursue, the changes we don't pursue, we're not just saying, all right, forget about it, you know, they go into the dustbin of history. No, we're going to keep those live. Who knows what changes could be made at this upcoming session? Who knows how the courts may interpret their authority to do it? So a lot of opportunities may become to use these, but we're recommending, and I know your frustration, and I kind of appreciate the moxie on it, but we're recommending the cautious approach at this time.
I have to tell you, if I might,
You may.
I think the greater burden is lack of resiliency. And I think that we're entitled to, when it comes to a vaguely written statute, which is nascent and uninterpreted by courts, I think that we're entitled to say, our view, assuming that we feel that way, that lack of resiliency is imposing a burden. That this isn't the same thing as saying, you know, all of your buildings will have, you know, this luxury amenity or some, you know, this which could lead one to that conclusion. Resiliency is about sustainability in a community, and to take that out of the land use plan, or to ignore that because we fear that there might be court action, you know, and when it comes to attorney's fees, that's a cost of doing business in government. I really think, I'm not saying that we should ignore the law. That would be irresponsible. But when it comes to something like resiliency, I think that, I think the lack of resilience is imposing a burden.
Mayor, one of the things I want to just emphasize what Barbara said starting this meeting, we are not going to ignore resiliency. It is going to be something we are considering. It's not going to be transmitted in this first tranche. That's all we're saying. The resiliency language that we have that's been presented us to by our department here at Broward County that we've all agreed with is staying right there. It's just not being on this first tranche because we know how they've already come down on that. But we're not ignoring that. I want to make the public very clear that we're not ignoring resiliency. We know the importance of it. We've actually already have taken action on it. But because of the Senate Bill 180, we don't want everything thrown out. We're kind of doing this in steps. Ms. Blake Boy?
Thank you, and I want to add just to that part, this is kind of was going to be at the end, which I touched on in the introduction, is our plan is that, the staff's plan, is anything that is would likely be deemed more restrictive or burdensome, be moved to a separate document and preserved, published on like the BrowardNext website. You know, it would have its own link on there with a narrative about the importance of these things. And that's why we use the term held in abeyance, because I think the other thing that we touched on in the opening was the great news is everything that exists in the plan continues to exist. So that's check. And then the second thing, these items that we're talking about holding it in abeyance, move to a document to be prepared so we're ready for workshop, public input, that we would be able to move to a hearing.
I like that.
Subsequent to that. So anything that is on this list that we're talking about is not going away. It will be preserved and ready for the next step. It's kind of like, to me, how Andy and I have been talking about it is really, we're shifting to kind of a phased implementation of this. So focus on incentives and things that, are likely going to be able to be accomplished. Greater densities, more flexibility for local governments. Focus on those as the priorities for this. And then at the conclusion, or when we have a better read on what's actually happening with 180, if there is a glitch bill, if a lawsuit gets settled, then we're ready to move into public input, and because that's kind of the step that we take before we're taking it to a public hearing before you.
So I have Mayor Gomez and I have Dr. Zeman one more time. What I'd like to do is we have a chance to take action at the end of this whole presentation. And at that point, if we still feel very strongly that we should include something that we're not including, let's bring it up at that time, because the action is basically, we're going to say without exception, move this forward, or with exception, add this, 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 and this, or don't do anything. So that's really at the end of this meeting. So with that, Mayor Gomez, then Dr. Zeman.
Well, again, apologies for being late. I have a different view of all this. In the respects of the word sustainability is already defined, with the purpose is to create and maintain conditions under which human and nature can exist in a productive harmony to support and present present and future generations. In order to do that, we must be resilient. So in my opinion, this is much ado about what sounds good versus what we're doing to move forward. So we can still do it. The vagueness lets us do what we need to do without putting any restrictions on us to be able to include what we feel creates the resiliency. The resiliency is created by the product, created by some of the terms that we put together, but it's already within sustainability. And I think sometimes we drill down too much and create too many problems. When it says through and including yada, 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 we don't have to continue defining what the yada is, because when we do that, we accidentally exclude what should be in that list, and we open us up for interpretation. So I don't think it is that big of a deal to remove the word resiliency when the purpose is already included in the item.
And I would say we're not removing, we were proposing to add it in so that.
No, just the word.
policy
I'm just
will
saying the
continue to
word.
exist.
It's just a word. It doesn't mean that we're not doing it within the term sustainability and to livability. That is all included for us to be able to exist in our future, present and future. We don't, the word resiliency sounds good. Sometimes to others it doesn't. We don't need that word to make us do what we need to do to create something that is sustainable, resilient, and making us be able to live in a future.
Especially in this first policy that's
Hold on
super
a second.
general.
Mayor Lee, excuse me one second, Dr. Zeman. I'm sorry about that. It is a very good point, too. If that was your point, it's a good point. Dr. Zeman,
I think if I changed my first name to Mayor, I might be able to go in order here. What do you think, Josh? I'm the only guy, me and Tommy, we're doing our best. I think words matter, to your point, Mayor Gomez, and it's important to realize the goal of what we're trying to do. But I also think there's a really interesting nugget in what Mayor Castillo is talking about, which is there's a legal way to introduce things that are about the long-term burden versus the cessation of burden long-term. So if sustainability and resiliency can be written into the plan so that it's very clear we're doing this to be less burdensome long-term, I think it'd be very difficult for the courts to say that's more burdensome. And given the general vagary of that term, I would prefer to be on that side. Now, all I would ask is that we ask you to come back and tell us whether or not the resiliency that you would prefer to keep in abeyance, which I just view as kind of a staff document, right? It has no governing authority. It's fine. I mean, I got a whole laptop full of staff documents for the school board. They don't mean anything, but they're all like drafts of things I'd love to do someday. But I would prefer that we achieve clearly the goals of resiliency and that we argue for those in the long-term plan for a less burdensome approach over the long term to what we'd have to do if we're not resilient. If we end up doing it, as Mayor Gomez says, in the language of sustainability, because that works better, that's fine. But words do matter, and people do think about Broward and our approach to resiliency when they judge how well we do in producing BrowardNext. So maybe we think a little bit not just about the staff documents that we put online, but maybe we also think a little bit about how we market BrowardNext, and we can market things in any words we want. And we can say we're dealing with resiliency if, in fact, the language we're using is a little bit more legally permissible. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Zeman.
Yeah, just to add that, just keep in mind, everyone, that what the state is going after with SB 180 is more restrictive and burdensome regulations and process in transmitting development applications. And remember, this was all brought forward by, I guess you can call it the experience or the impression of the state that when properties impacted by hurricanes in the state had a problem renewing their entitlements to build what they lost. And I think that's like the legislative intent of the state is hey, we don't want to let people not rebuild what they lost. And I think they're looking at that, obviously, with the wide, breadth of this law, just broadly, and saying that they want the redevelopment, and I would call it resilient redevelopment of the state, to not be burdened by, by regulations that they deem, more burdensome. And so, point is that while we can look at it and say, resiliency regulations today result in less of a burdensome, experience for property owners 50 years from now because they have a more resilient building, what the state and SB 180 are looking at is the burden created specifically in the process to rebuild. So, this particular, any restrictions in our land use plan that are more restrictive on property owners that's the burden they're looking at. They're not looking at the long-term burden. While we can, talk about that, it's what's in here that's going to slow people down or not be able to make functional use of their property is, I think, where the state's head is at. So,
Mayor Lee, I think that's a good point. I think everybody's made really valid points today, and I appreciate it, especially you bringing up Mayor Castillo. What I'd like to do is go through the presentation today, and at the end of the presentation, if we still feel strongly that we shouldn't move forward in the direction we're moving, let's add or change or do something differently. But I do think we have to look at this as a phased approach. There's a lot of different groups that are going to be challenging the SB 180 for what it means, and the impact it's going to have. That's going to, in 2 months from now, may be completely different. We may be adding it back in by then. So again, for now, I'd like to go through the presentation where we are so we can continue with our job, which is, identifying issues at BrowardNext that we can do better, change, and maybe have some policies implemented now that will help, with all of these things we're trying to accomplish, whether it be transportation, resiliency, whatnot. So with that, Ms. Blake Boy.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm just a little unsure of how we should kind of go through these slides. If you want me, do you want to stop on each one, or do you just want
I
to
want
talk
you to
about
go
this
through the slides,
holistically?
please. I want you to go through the slides, and then we'll have a discussion at the end.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the next slide referenced, the next policy referenced is 2.2.6. And this is a situation where we had proposed basically a new policy, and our review of it is this potential to be deemed more restrictive or burdensome, and it's related to, we use the term economic security, and I think that's probably, this is like a two-pronged piece. This is probably more restrictive or burdensome, and also it could be in conflict with other legislation, 2505, Bill 2505, and may consider that we need to remove that reference at the minimum. So there's two ways you can go on this. You can remove that reference of economic security and just keep the policy up until that point, or we could hold the entire policy in abeyance. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. So policy 2.4.8 is the next policy, and that is related to activity centers. And this was about safely navigating the transportation network, and a requirement for activity centers more likely to be more restrictive or burdensome, hold in abeyance. 2.4.10 was a new policy that we were proposing about reduced parking ratios, which there's a lot of controversy and discussion around that anyway. Shared parking and smart parking
Ms. Blake Boy,
technologies.
I just want to make sure, guys, if you have a strong opinion right now and you want to jump in, I don't want to shut down discussion, so please don't interpret my words as shutting down discussion. Please jump in if you have a strong opinion on any one of these items, okay?
So that would be a recommendation for holding that policy in abeyance, and this next version of the document we're talking about. The deletion of policy 2.4.10, we already talked about, sorry. 2.4.11, in interconnectivity, and within the activity centers, this is, our determination or recommendation is based on what we reviewed in other plans, so we found that should be held in abeyance. 2.5.4, we're
Real
gonna
quick,
start.
Mr. Chair, just with regards to 2.4.11, the idea that we can promote the urban form that creates an integrated land use combinations, balance, intensity, density, promoting safe interconnectivity of, and this is the additional language, pedestrian bicycle transit usage compatible with adjacent land uses. That could probably be flipped into a nice incentive-based opportunity, which most projects today, I think, and especially through the city process, really take into account pedestrian bicycle transit use. And so how do you see that sort of still being encouraged and obviously a fact of reality, right?
The policy remains. I think that's the great thing about where we're in strike through and underline mode is the policy continues to exist.
Right.
So we're not taking away anything by holding that in abeyance.
To Mayor Gomez's point
Right.
about,
Words matter, right, or they don't, right.
Or they don't, yeah,
Or they
yeah,
don't,
right.
right.
But you do
Gotcha.
have the alternate words there. So
Right, so you're still the impact or the.
the result is the same.
Right, they're
Okay.
same result.
It's very, I want to emphasize one more time, the policy still remains, it's the strike-throughs and.
Right, policy remains. So so in this Parks and Conservation, section, we start getting more into the meat of resiliency planning and kind of, so there had been an extensive discussion about this series of policies at the previous meeting. And like we said at the beginning, and we keep saying, the policy will continue to exist. It already exists in the plan. The expansion or recognition of these additional uses would be held in abeyance.
And just, I think something should inform your thinking on that. Just as an example, on the pedestrian, the one we just dealt with. If you go the extra mile and add the additional words and get slapped down, then you have a determination, not necessarily judicial, could be if you go take it up. You have a determination by the state that that is not allowed. If you keep the words, which kind of go in that direction anyway, and don't have a challenge, you are, and this goes
Exactly to Mayor
goes to Mayor Gomez's point. So you can take a step back by getting struck down on some of these things.
Agree.
So it's a matter of sometimes just playing, thinking of that. I'm not saying that's 100% remedy, but it's something that's helpful, I think.
It's a very good point. Thank you, Andy. Dr. Zima.
Thanks. I just need some clarification so that I can play my role right. You mentioned 3 cases where jurisdictions, one being Orange County was the first, I think, submitted something that the state deemed to be more restrictive.
Right, they deemed their plan null and void because they had policies or requirements that were deemed more restrictive or burdensome.
Great. So I was a bureaucrat for 20 years, so I'm going to represent my first career, and I'm going to go back to Mayor Levy's point. Mayor Levy said SB 180 was the result of people after a hurricane couldn't rebuild exactly what they had before. I'm not going to debate the policy merits, by the way, which I'd love to do another time if anybody wants to defend what they've done. But, I mean, if they were the legislature of North Carolina, would they rebuild those wooden shacks that are on the beach in the Cape? I mean, I just don't understand what they're really trying to intend here. But we can learn from what the bureaucrats are doing. Because the bureaucrats, I think, in the 3 cases, if I remember the details correctly, were not ruling about anything related to hurricane damage or emergency repairs or anything like that, right? They were just taking the words of the legislation and like a big hammer, and they were beating the hell out of Orange County. Am I right?
Therein lies the problem, yes.
Right. So they can have the intent that they want, but until they change the law, we have to figure out how to play this the right way.
And that's,
Have we heard anything from the authors of these words on whether or not they are open to making them more specific to what they say their original intent was?
who is that question to?
Anybody that has that knowledge?
I don't have that knowledge.
I don't either.
I mean-
I don't, the only knowledge I have is that they're moving forward with like lawsuits. So I don't know that there's, that a city's just been like, okay, well, we're going to change that. And-
I think that's
but
the
they have-
reason.
Sorry, I just want to finish. The state has indicated they have to readopt their plan. So they have to go back through transmittal and adoption of their plan. It's not just take that out and your plan can move forward. It's go back through the process.
And that's one of the reasons why, where we say held in abeyance, that stays exactly as it is without the strike through or the new language added. It stays right there in our plan. And we do not submit this plan in entirety. We're only submitting the changes. We're recommending submitting any of the changes that we agree on to Tallahassee. They're not going to have a vote on what's already been adopted.
So when we do the public,
And Orange County, they
Hold on
had
a
that
sec,
vote.
guys.
yes.
I just want to be clear. I appreciate this abeyance stuff. But to the public, we have to admit, that means it's not in effect. It's a document sitting on a website.
No. This is in effect. Let me be clear. What's in effect in 2.411?
Yeah.
Everything you see here is in effect, except for where we struck out the word vehicular, pedestrian, and other non-motorized movement. That stays in. And the language next to it, pedestrian, bicycle, and transit usage, doesn't get adopted. But
familiar
the
with that.
language, this policy stays in place.
Look, I'm just a surfer from the beach here, okay, guys? But when you tell the public that the changes are going to be held in a document somewhere, in reality, they have no effect in a document somewhere. I just want to be clear about that.
Until such time.
It's
Yeah,
staff work.
Correct,
Very fair.
100%.
Okay, so let's just
Very
talk
fair.
about it in a language that a surfer from Fort Lauderdale can understand, okay?
Okay, so all
Second
surfers
point,
from
if
Fort
I could,
Lauderdale.
please?
You may.
I mean,
You may.
like to actually kind of get through to my points here. I don't want us to assume intent of a law. Like, I appreciate knowing what they thought they were trying to do with this law, and it just doesn't matter. It's interesting, not relevant. Because what is relevant is what happened to those 3 jurisdictions that tried to do something. That's where I think we should draw lessons, right? And what were they, just to be clear to the staff, was there any indication in what they did that this was related to reaction to a natural emergency? The 3 that they objected to?
So, and those 3 are just examples. There's others.
Is there any evidence that they are, the bureaucrats are reacting to the intent of the law or to the words of the law?
The letters are form letters, because I've, you know, we're trying, we're analyzing them like the diplomatic cables and, you know, and it's a form, and basically said, we reviewed, we find that they are more restrictive or burdensome, and therefore, on the basis of Section 28 of SB 180, are null and void ab initio. So there is no analysis, there is no,
But it's in Section 28. The language of the hurricanes is in Section 28.
that is their language. And you are
Here on
correct.
page 1 of our packet.
You are correct, because it's any one of the 67 counties,
Right.
67 of the 67 counties in Florida so it applies to the whole state, but anyone that was mentioned in one of the 3 hurricane declarations. But so that is 28. But there is not a lot of elucidation in it. It's just a letter. We've looked at it. It's void. That's
Got
all.
it. But many of the things that caused it to be voided are unrelated to emergency, reactions to emergency, to what you said.
They could. That's one of the, you know, that's some of the challenges are dealing with that issue.
All right, last question. When you talk about a separate document that we're going to put on our website, would you like this body to approve those things so that if 180 is reversed in the next legislature, you can start going through the process to adopt those things?
Yes, that is the
That is
exact
exactly.
intent. That is exactly what we're trying to
Well, I
accomplish.
wish the chair had told us that at the beginning.
To be prepared
I think
for-
I did, but
Right. The message that we're trying to deliver today, which apparently we haven't been, is that anything that is going to, that we've proposed to be held in abeyance moves to a separate document to be prepared with a narrative about the impacts basically of 180, and that we're not abandoning the county's approach to resiliency planning, but we're prepared, emergency prepared or otherwise, for the future to move on, okay, now this is ready, because at this point, even if we have a public workshop on it, we're taking input, it will be all for naught, right? Because whatever changes that we can't anticipate or, you know, can hope for the future, if they don't happen, we could have to revise it again. So we felt like, you know, in the discussion point, it's better to preserve it for that future conversation. It's basically, it'll be ready to go.
Are you going to cover the timeline of the alternate model, if in fact they change the legislation, how long it'll take to bring back the version we
From
really
the
want?
date of the opening to move forward, you know, because it could be an interpretation,
Right.
a judicial interpretation. It could be they changed their interpretation.
What's the flash to bang, though? How long does that
We can
take?
go from that date.
So it would be whatever date we are alerted that there is a
Plus.
judicial, probably, where you're probably plus 90 or 120 days to get
Great.
you to a public hearing
Thank
for
you.
transmittal.
thank you, thank you.
Okay, so we're in the Parks and Conservation section. As I mentioned, there was a lot of discussion about this section at the March and April meetings. And basically, these policies are about the encouragement of open space, which I mentioned Lighthouse Point. That was one of the policies that the city had adopted to be consistent with the county plan that was found more restrictive or burdensome. So, you know, we felt the best bet for each of these policies in the section was to hold in abeyance for that. Because also one of them is referencing the water storage map, which were also the natural resource map series that are referenced in here. I'll just take the opportunity to say those will also be held in abeyance with that part of the package prepared for public participation. The urban agriculture policy, 2.6.1, we felt like this consideration, when considering the location of residential uses, for the access to fresh food was the piece that made it more restrictive or burdensome. The mining policy, this was a clarification of the fracking policy, and it really just expanded the definition of all of the ways that fracking can be approached, and that likely more restrictive or burdensome. Good news is the policy still exists with that language, so to be held for future discussion. Encouraging increased density along transportation and transit corridors. I just want to look at my my notes for that one of what I said in my notes. Because it has the protection of areas of low density, right? So now we're adding on an additional protection that doesn't exist in the policy as it stands today. So hold it in abeyance. Policy 2.12.6, sorry, fast forwarded. 2.12.6,
Are you saying that the underlined on page 7, you feel is more restrictive?
the underlying on page 7, for policy 2.10.3?
No.
No, okay, sorry.
It's really the second phrase that just would need to be struck, not the whole. Otherwise, you're expanding the opportunity, right?
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, 2.10.3 is not being recommended being held to bans. Right?
Actually,
It is, but, and I would
Just
say.
that portion.
Right, I would say that if we take out, I should have, I think, had a more detailed note there. We could consider the rest of the policy, I think, because we increase
delete and to
residential
protect.
density, and then we could remove, hold in abeyance the with lower density residential designations and development, because that was,
Completely agree with Dr.
that's
Seaman on
that's
that.
the key to that policy that makes it more restrictive.
one.
So I should have had a better note. Yes,
So when you're voting, you're considering that.
right,
Just with that change.
yes. So if we have any of others like that.
And just to clarify, then we would be striking the words "and to protect areas with lower density residential designations and development." But we
Right,
would be
so we would
retaining the
Retain the
first
rest of the
two.
policy, hold that other piece
Right.
in abeyance for future consideration.
Yes.
Transportation policies, 2.14, 1, 2, and 3. Those were not part of your previous discussion wholly, but now they are proposed for deletion to comply with both Florida statutes related to transportation concurrency and the Broward County Code of Ordinances. So those were, we had discussed that with the county staff in March and April, and we were waiting to see what the legislation was having and what the impact was going to be. And now we know that those policies need to be removed. The county is no longer going to be collecting concurrency fees for transportation or parks. And the school impact fee will be, I'm not sure, collected by the school board, but that's not part of this policy piece. So that's just going to be, and I'm actually going to repeat that recommendation again at the end since it was new since the other meetings. Policy 2.14.10 is proposed for deletion. And we are saying maintain this existing policy because we had recommended relocation, and that's one of the anecdotal stories we were sharing is the relocation could be considered a new policy because it's now underlined and for readoption. So we're just going to maintain the location of that policy where it is today and do nothing else with it for now. Policy 2.15.7. There was a lot of discussion at the April meeting, and this was just about the encouragement of the school board to exempt school impact fees. So there's two things to consider here, just elimination of that overall, or staff drafted based on your discussion, something that just says that the cities may want to support that. So it turned it into a should policy and kind of took out, I think, hopefully school board member Zeman of don't tell us how to spend our money kind of idea.
You saved my speech, thank you.
Okay.
Two.
Two. You got two.
Carryover.
I'm going to the lottery ticket tonight, man. This is good.
216.4 is just listed on here because we were awaiting an update from Senator Geller's office about, he had a series of meetings from January to May or June of this year about the policy. And I've reached out to his office several times. He is not proposing any changes to that policy to be considered. So there was nothing here for that. I just wanted to mention that to you because we were waiting a report on that. Policy 218.1. I don't know these by heart. Let me see. Relocation may be viewed as this. Maintain the location previously that we already talked about. 219.1 is a new policy. And this is a policy about, this was one that maybe we could try if we shifted the shall to should. And it's about the county and the MPO and programming to achieve zero fatalities. So when Andy and I were talking, it was one of those policies, it could go either way if we shifted it to should. And I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to the discussion, or you're okay with trying should, or you want us to remove it and hold it in abeyance. Abeyance?
Is there any value in this?
There's not much.
I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, there's the value is it's recognizing the programming that the county's partnering with the MPO on. So it's a recognition of that. So I can do abeyance or I can eliminate it, and we can wait for the county staff.
My recommendation, and if it's okay, I think the policy's good for us to recognize it, but let's just hold that in abeyance because I don't think it's going to make
least.
that much of a difference.
Okay,
There are probably administrative ways to really get 99%.
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
right. The programming
Back
is
to
still
you.
happening.
It's 100% to
What
your
we're
point.
talking about, the programming's happening.
Exactly.
Exactly. Policy versus procedures. Policy is what's voted on and everybody needs to see and go get approved. The procedures are how we handle what the policy wants us to do.
Sometimes you could say two.
Correct.
Amen.
Okay, thank you. So, smart growth, there's a couple policies in here where we were, there's clarifications of intent. There was the inclusion of additional, the climate change action plan and the regional climate action plan strategies. So Planning Council staff recommends, holding those in abeyance because they are very likely more restrictive or burdensome, layering on plans that are not previously referenced. Climate resiliency, adaptation action areas and priority planning areas. I was like AAA and PPA. So this is really where, we worked very closely with Dr. Jurado and Dr. Mount, last winter in updating this section. And this is where you find the, again, the references to the additional natural resource map series maps. And we recommend that all of these reference policies, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, are held in abeyance, including the referenced maps, until such time that we can move forward with a conversation that could if either come to fruition or modify that. And two more, 9 and 10, same idea as the incorporation of the consideration of those. So these are the maps, just in case a reminder, they're tabbed in here, will be held in the abeyance document. For environmentally sensitive lands, so I grayed out to 23.2, a little bit darker gray. I had an email last night, I just had these all grayed out from Mayor Levy, just talking about if this was more restrictive or burdensome. And I just wanted to touch on this for a second, if we need to have more discussion. This is the idea of actually making it less burdensome, because right now applicants are going through an amendment on the Broward County Land Use Plan Natural Resource Map Series and going through the licensing and permitting process, and there's a conflict in the process. So this is that policy. So if you're okay with that, we can re-gray it out, or if you would have more discussion.
Well, the reason why I asked about it, I wasn't in attendance at that planning council meeting where there was that one applicant who had gone through the permitting process, had offered a lot of mitigation. It was, I guess, supported in the application process, but then on the land use side, it was questioned and the board didn't like the conflicting processes. And so I think this provision was aimed at relieving that, but it made reference to a wetlands map and said, you know what, instead of doing it those two ways, we'll just do it the same way we do wetlands map. And I have no idea what wetlands map meant, but if it was going to be more burdensome through that other way, I was just looking out for not getting that struck. If it is in effect a reference to a process that's more burdensome than what that double process might be today, I don't know.
Sorry, it's streamlined, the intent is to streamline the process. So to make these applications so that there wouldn't be this conflict, because it's supposed to be a planning document, because we're on, as we've discussed extensively at meetings, we're unable as staff, we can't get mitigation, conservation easements. These are tools that are beyond. It's supposed to be a planning tool. So take it back to that original intent instead of kind of this process it's going into. So I do believe it's, and I think Andy is in agreement.
Oh, yes,
that
and I think you'll find most attorneys representing developers will prefer this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it would run through the permit application and review
Licensing and
process?
permitting only, which is the existing process, but right now it's a dual process.
gotcha.
So you cut time out.
All right,
So,
good,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So I think
But it's a good point.
It's very positive.
A very
So
good point to bring that
I
up.
just wanted to kind of highlight it in case we need to have that.
Great.
Beaches and rivers, 27.1. Oh, adding the word preservation, the same conversation I think we had earlier about resiliency applies to that. And then the 229.4 is a new policy, and this is related only to the greenways and trails system, so not private property ownership. And this is just about how they should be designed to take into account climate conditions. And like I said, it's applicable for those public lands only. So it's on the edge. So
I mean, this is one that I question, but.
yeah, it's on the
It's not-
edge.
If there's a strong feeling for doing it, we're not going to.
Yeah, that's why we made a recommendation to proceed. But if we can hold it in abeyance, no problem.
What if you shift to should instead of shall and make it clear that this is directed toward the municipalities?
Or provide incentives?
I'm gonna give that,
Those for municipalities, not-
I'm gonna give you 3 there.
Yeah.
Let's just change it to should.
Okay, so we'll change it to should, and then we'll hold the shall.
We're having a
part.
hell of a day.
Okay.
He's on a roll.
He's leaving now.
Normally 3 strikes are out, but for him, this might be like an RBI. 229.4 is what we just talked about. And then finally, this wasn't part of your March and April discussion wholly. A piece of it was, but we've been in discussions with the county attorney's office about 236.1 and 2 related to environmental justice. And based on state legislation, they need to be removed deleted from the document. The county attorney's office asked if we could fast track that deletion as a package, take it to you in your December meeting to get it adopted by early next year.
Yes.
I should have put that in the notes also, but I just remembered when we're talking about it.
Fantastic.
So we'll add it to the December agenda for that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then just a couple more items in this section. You were awaiting an update for us related to disaster planning policies, and that's policies 212, 3, 4, 5, and 8. And those are basically, when we adopted BrowardNext, there was an idea that there would be a new map adopted into the Natural Resource Map Series. That did not happen. So that was a by 2017 date. We've been in meetings and discussions with the emergency management staff about these policies. They also have an understanding of 180. I think the idea for right now is to just hold the policies as they exist. We could consider the removal of the date, but also that could draw the state's attention to it. So maybe we should just leave it as is and have a date that is no longer relevant until we can really address these policies. Anything that we were changing for emergency management would likely be more restrictive or burdensome, and the staff doesn't have a clear direction right now for this.
I agree.
Okay.
Leave it as is.
As is. And then 218.3, you were waiting for something for us. We say maintain the existing policy. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. 218.3, hold any modification to that policy in abeyance. Same idea. It'd be likely more restrictive. Then the next page is a reiteration of the transportation concurrency and impact fees discussion that we had about deleting 1, 2, and 3 from the plan. So you already agreed to that. And one of the changes we had proposed in 3 was about the timing for the collection of concurrency fees, and that becomes irrelevant because the transportation concurrency fee is no longer going to exist. So those policies will be proposed for deletion. And that concludes the policies section. The other sections are going to be so much better and easier. But so, just want to give it back to you in case there's any more discussion besides the notes that you gave us during the discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Blake Boy. Questions around Mayor? Mayor Castillo.
So they had a hurricane, and people complained that what was lost in the hurricane couldn't be rebuilt. It was too bureaucratically difficult because of the amalgamation over time of additional regulations that probably didn't exist when the original structure was put up, and that this created a burden. Is that basically how we got started with 180? And from there, it evolved into this somewhat angry, threatening grunt against things like resiliency and green, because, I mean, can't do that, and, protecting water and all this kind of other stuff. But that portion of it became less defined than what the original purpose was, which was just to allow a homeowner to rebuild their house pretty much along the lines of what existed before. And then school member Zeman talks about how they used to be shacks, which, however, tolerated it in 1920 when they were built. They still have to sort of meet code, and I don't see that 120 abolishes building codes or anything else. And so, even to that extent, and they probably don't abolish other things like fair housing federal rules or other federal rules that might apply to how construction is done or reconstruction is done. And so it is not an absolute policy. I don't think any court would probably say that this is an absolute restriction against any set of rules. There are certain, it is sort of boxed in with to some extent, and not as far flung as it was before. And we've seen some of these policies come down through statutes from Tallahassee recently that have been argued in the courts, as this one is now, and redefined later on. I would think that within limited reason, which isn't necessarily as safe and conservative as, though I respect that approach as we're taking, we shouldn't be afraid of things like resiliency and protecting the environment and those kinds of things. If in fact the genesis for those clarifications precedes the date of the statute, and if someone sues and some judge says that we stepped over the boundary, or if the state says we stepped over the boundary, I would rather risk that than sort of eliminate some of the protections that are built into the basic purpose of the Planning Council, which is to serve as the county's land use planning arm, with the specific purpose of enhancing or protecting the quality of life for residents through the use of land use policy. And, I, you know, I would advise from sort of the 10,000 foot view of this rather than the 1,000 foot view of it, that we not sort of take this so so threateningly. I don't see the reason for that. I don't know why it is that the Orlando plan was refused. I don't know if that was some sort of test case on some state bureaucratic level to try to teach us all a lesson here, or whether or not there was something in particular about the Orlando thing that was just out of line. I don't know the specifics of that. But I would not apply this doom and gloom approach to 180. Second thing is just an observation on my part. I mean, and this has been talked about before, we are very robust here in Broward County in terms of our land use code. We're a very forward real estate area and have been for decades. We're decades ahead of a lot of other counties on land use. So we have that to rely on in terms of the plan requirements that exist now. And every once in a while, there's a little bit of a moratorium, maybe that's too strong a word, on creating new rules. And, you know, you go through the ebbs and flows of time, and there's a time for more rules, and then there's a time when you sort of slow down, and maybe we're in a slow down kind of time. But when it comes to things like protecting the environment, resiliency, and that kind of thing, I don't think we should be too worried about it. Nor do I think we should go overboard with it at this time because of the environment that we're in. And there should be exceptions to policies. And planning documents are not etched in stone and immovable options. When it comes to words like should, Barbara, when it comes to words like should, if should is the inclination of the day, I would prefer rather than should, the application should demonstrate what efforts were taken to, I don't think that's overburdensome. The application should demonstrate what efforts were taken to try to make sure that we don't pollute the water or that we don't kill the turtles or whatever the thing is. I don't know that the application should state what effort could be seen as burdensome, rather than should, which sort of suggests that it's optional to follow it or not follow it, or discretionary to follow it or should follow it. I don't know that we're in a position to say shall on these things. That might be considered a burden, but asking people to demonstrate what effort we're taking. So maybe that's not even the right way to phrase it, but I think that should sort of sends a message out that we're not really vested in an outcome. We should, asking someone to explain what effort they took in a particular area doesn't seem overburdensome to me. I don't know that, maybe that helps, maybe that doesn't help. I really don't think that we should, and I respect it, you know, that this is a state statute. I really don't think we should take it all so seriously. I think that there's still room there for us to perform our role, so long as we're careful about it. That's my view on it.
Thanks. A couple comments I'll just make in response to what you said. First of all, life safety doesn't fall under this. Life safety issues that you mentioned, you can't build any life safety issue that comes up that's deemed a life safety issue, you can't disregard. So when you talk about building codes or other things, you have to, whatever is currently enacted has to be rebuilt to the current code, not the way that house was built in 1925. So that's addressing that. What we're talking about, and any policy that exists in our land use code right now exists, unless we did something that could jeopardize that, like go submit the entire thing to have them take a bite at that apple. We're not proposing that. we have a very good land use code in BrowardNext right now that exists. Our challenge and our directive is to update this code as we see fit currently to make sure it matches the next several years in the future, and we're addressing what we think could have been done a little bit better. But let me say, the BrowardNext and this land use code that we have in existence is strong. It addresses these issues, and we've been doing things right for a long time. We're trying to tweak it right now. So in this phased approach, Mayor Castillo, I really feel like we're accomplishing that because there's things that we can identify right now that we can do and make a difference and get that through. But we do have some language in here that's good for resiliency. We're trying to make it better and really enhance that. So if we think that's going to jeopardize getting things accomplished that we can get accomplished right now, my suggestion is we hold that in abeyance. Not that we disregard it. I think we need to get through what we can, because I don't know what that timeline, because when they're going to throw it out, then we'll be in a lawsuit, because I think you're right. By the way, I think what you're saying is right. Don't get me wrong. I'm in 100% agreement with you, but I think when does that lawsuit get settled? How long does all of these things take to get enacted, because we knowingly put things in there that could be challenged?
That's fair.
That's my concern.
That's fair.
Of course.
So I prefer, but again, this is the will of this committee, then we take it back to our main planning council. So, Dr. Zeman.
I'm fine with all the decisions we made today, and I'm fine given the conditions that we find ourselves in. But I also call these things that you use the term put in abeyance as progress. And we are being prohibited in Broward County from making progress. And oftentimes making progress puts restrictions on other people. We make you wear a seatbelt when you get in a car. We enforce, every once in a while, speed limits. Well, maybe not anymore. We used to enforce speed limits, but we have speed limits, and that restricts people from doing things. We restrict people tremendously on land use. And I'm fine with having a robust policy. We have a robust land use policy, though, that we developed 6 years ago. We're trying to update it. I wanted to serve on this board because I thought we could make progress. And 180 prevented me, personally, from contributing to the progress that I wanted Broward County to make. I'm hoping it's a delay. But we also have to recognize the political trend is not in our favor. And, you know, elections have consequences, and Broward County would like to make progress and is held back by the state of Florida. And I just want to be clear about that. We are not being able to make the progress that the citizens of Broward County want for our land use policy. And if we hold it in abeyance for 6 months, I get it. If we hold it for a year, but I don't know that the progress locker that we're going to put all this stuff in is ever going to happen. And that, to me, is just sad, because Broward County would like to do even better. Some of those things would put restrictions on other people, but that's what governance is all about, is how far do you go in restricting people so that the overall community is better off. And we're being denied the opportunity here, city by city and in Broward County, for making progress toward fulfilling our commitment to become an even better county. And to me, that's sad. And I don't understand the heavy-handedness and the punitive nature of many of the things going on in Tallahassee, school-wise, land use-wise, and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zeman. I will comment on one thing. I think we can use what's being held in abeyance, the citizens can use that to say, to encourage their representatives, their state senators, their state reps to make a decision and maybe overturn that, because we're not getting things done that need to get done. I think when people see what's in our back, what we're putting on the website, those citizens out there that really believe that we should have resiliency policies in place, they could say, look what you're preventing. You know, that's something we can use. There may be a heavy hand on the backside with those policies held in abeyance. That is why I think it's really important we put all those policies in plain sight on our website, that we're trying to affect this change. We want to affect this change for the betterment of our county and our state, but we're being prevented to do so. So maybe they can use that as another tool. Who knows?
Very quickly. May I?
Absolutely, Councilmember Horwath.
I don't want to beat the dead horse that is Senate Bill 180. I think that all valuable conversations, it's not really what we're here for today, but I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Please have these conversations with the members of the Broward delegation.
Yes.
The author of the bill, Senate 180, came out yesterday, Nick DeSigley, and said that he realizes now that there's unintended consequences to the language that was inserted on the last day of session. So that was not necessarily his language, but he is making it a priority this session, and that's why it's very important that we talk to our representatives and tell them about what we're trying to accomplish here, so they can take that back. And if you happen to go up to Tallahassee for committee weeks, try to get an appointment with Nick DeSigley and express to them how that's hampering us in Broward County. So again, I think this is the most prudent way for us to move forward so that we don't lose all the work that has been put into this for the last year. So I know you have more to cover, so thank you. Okay.
Councilmember
Yeah,
Harlan?
that's great.
We just have Mayor Gomez.
Just a comment. No, I have full of them. Nothing is safe when the legislature's in session. It was what I was taught all throughout law school. He said it, my real estate professor said it every single day, and I had him for 2 different courses. So it's what happens here. There's a bootstrap on everything, and it's like, oh, poop. I didn't mean it to be that way. Let's try to fix it. Pendulum this way, pendulum that way. In the interim, we as the county and we as our cities wind up having to run around trying to fix what that was put in place that maybe shouldn't have put in place, which is the whole reason for our home rule, to try to fight to get this done. And we do need to talk to our legislators. And we need to talk to our legislators, not local. Our locals should get it by now. We need to reach out to the ones, I call them upstate, the ones who are not familiar with how Broward County truly is built out. Buildings and water and business, whereas everything else is a little bit more flat land. So again, just commentary, we need to be able to do this together. Whether we maybe do this as individually or as a group here, I don't know if we're allowed to do that.
And just to your point, yes, it's important because our locals do understand, but they're probably not all aware of what we're doing here with BrowardNext. You know, it's safe to say they're not aware that we're updating the policy. So that's when I say it's important, because yes, typically they back us up on those home rule issues, but I think it's important that they understand the process that we're in right now.
Yeah, I've been screaming this from the mountaintop since Senate Bill 180 came out, and I've been telling everybody I can think of, and I think we all need to do the same thing. Mayor Levy.
So just to take it back to a couple policies, and maybe even a new one, and this builds on what Chair Giorgio talked about with regards to new building codes that would apply if a shack were to need to be rebuilt today. You know, the new building codes would apply, and so you'd end up with a much more resilient new construction than the shack that got taken out. So in our practical experience here in South Florida, we had the collapse of the Champlain Towers in Surfside a few years ago. That prompted some discussion, of course, about building inspections and things to prevent that. But as the stock of high-rise buildings, especially on the coastline, continue to age and get weathered by the elements, we're obviously hearing, and with the new condo requirements on reserves and building safety inspections and requirements, we know, and I can tell you as a mayor of the city of Hollywood, as a coastal city, we have a ton of older condos where the 75-year-old resident getting hit with a $100,000 assessment to, you know, reinvest into the concrete of the building to preserve its structural integrity has a problem with that. Sometimes the better option, these owners themselves will tell you, is this building needs to be demolished and should be built to the new resilient standards of today's building codes, which will come with, you know, more green space and a modern building, except that our land use plan prevents that opportunity from happening through density restrictions. So, for example, on South Hollywood Beach, where the Diplomat Hotel is, there's high-rise buildings. If they were to be, you know, desire to be torn down, some of them today, to rebuild, you know, a newer building, the density limitations that are east of the Intracoastal would prevent that from happening. And so I know that Senator Geller, that was one of the things that he was looking at with regards to the reconstruction of buildings and to retain the density that they had on, you know, as they were approved, say, in the 1970s. Might exceed today's new construction density, you know, limitations per acre. But Barbara, maybe you can share some light on where that is, because it's a sensible opportunity for new construction.
That actually already exists in the county plan today, under
Where?
redevelopment and coastal high hazard areas. And that's in the permitted uses section. It's not in the policy section. So that permitted use of replacement buildings exists. And that was because of a statutory change around 2005. The language was added into the plan. And what staff is proposing as a further modification to that is actually for that to be permitted countywide, because there are many of these kind of PUDs that were developed prior to 1977, the adoption of that plan, that are perhaps under land use or under zone now. So there's a proposed expansion to countywide. So you are permitted for the redevelopment of density to what you are built at today.
Already today?
Yes.
So that old condo scenario that
Right.
has 50 units or 100 units
Right.
can be torn
Right.
down and you can build a new, more resilient 50 and 100 units.
Right, so I think that is likely addressed in the permitted use that exists, and it's, like I said, it's existed for a little while, and we thought it was time for the expansion to countywide, because there are areas in these golf courses, similar situations, maybe not as high of an assessment that maybe on the beach, but the same thing, kind of like outdated product and like need.
So is that right now restricted? If it's not countywide, then what is the
Right
limitation?
now, it's only in coastal high hazard areas, and so this would likely be deemed less restrictive or burdensome. So should we?
Yeah,
should we just move?
so we should be, but
So if
we
I
are
could just
addressing, but
just
we are
mention
addressing that.
one policy that's kind of similar to it, and I think we had, our planning director for the city had submitted a public comment, specifically about 2.10.1, which was the allocation of flex units, east of the Intracoastal Waterway. You know, the city's opportunities are to issue flex units when it wants to approve a project that's, could be commercial, but you want to have some residential in it, right? To have a mixed-use opportunity, then the city has the freedom, correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara, to issue flex units. Right now, our policy limits the flex units east of the Intracoastal Waterway to 25 dwelling units per acre,
Correct.
whereas the density opportunity elsewhere in the county is 50, right?
50 in residential, but essentially unlimited on commercial. And yes, that limitation to no more than 25 units per acre east of the Intracoastal Waterway has been in effect for about 22 years. So yes, that is how the plan has proceeded, and I think, yeah, go ahead. I don't think
My point is maybe we ought to have a meeting with our planning people and you and your staff to talk about what the impact of that 22 years looks like with regards to the stagnation that there could be as a result, because there is that economic picture of if I can't, build something, economically meaningful enough, then the building that's there today is just going to stay, and it's stagnating for 22 years, for example, on Hollywood Beach in some areas. And this is all subject to zoning and height limits and everything that exists already in the city code, but there could be impact to this. And so maybe we ought to have sort of a discussion on the sidelines on what has occurred, for example, on Hollywood Beach in South Broward County, and if this flex unit limitation, is a problem or not. Maybe our planners, because I know our planning director had put in a comment, and so we
And
should
I
talk-
think that was
talk
to
about it.
Senator Geller as part of his conversation, and we just had included it because it was tangentially related. And I think there's always room for conversation. I mean, I'm not going to form an opinion
Right.
here today, but I think that that's like almost in conflict with like the resiliency planning. So, but that's for
But I do
the
think
policy
conversations
body
are
to move
wonderful.
forward.
That's
Right.
what we're trying to do, figure
Right.
out what's the best way to move forward,
Right.
so I support that. Okay,
Okay, so just in the definition section, this should be very brief. At the April meeting, there was these are the list of proposed additional definitions, and the barrier island, coastal barrier island was discussed to eliminate those definitions, continue to refer to it as east of the Intracoastal Waterway, and then there's no confusion.
great.
Under permitted uses, just two quick items I want to touch on is a new proposal under the commerce category. Currently, this allocation of flexibility units that Mayor Levy's talking to, or redevelopment units, is limited to 10 units per acre. We think that should be a local determination of what that limitation is, because often there's a 12 or 15 acre shopping center that it could be appropriate for. So it should be up to the local government to determine that maximum
Definitely less
acreage.
restrictive.
Okay, and then the second piece is something that just was brought to my attention. This, you may recall, at the March steering committee, we were directed by you to include residential as a permitted use if it has an affordable housing component and recreation open space. Staff had recommended against it, included in there. I do believe that it should exclude east of the Intracoastal Waterway, and that's consistent with other incentives that we have for affordable housing right now, such as on community use, is to exclude that east of the Intracoastal Waterway. So this is just
Discussion on
draft
that.
language, and it has not been adopted.
Yeah, if I might, just on the restriction of encouraging attainable housing east of the Intracoastal, I think one thing you need to consider, and I serve on the Tourist Development Council, and one of the things we learned was a lot of the service workers who work at the hotels that earn a very low wage live far away from the coastal area. A lot, for example, in Lauderhill, and it was, we did a study with Broward County Transit, and it took 2 hours for that service worker to use the transit system to get to the hotel they work in. And you know what that does to life. You can't have 2 hours before and 2 hours after work. And so I think it would be very beneficial and also allows people to live next to where they work without having to, us to see live local as the only opportunity. I don't think we ought to discourage projects from including attainable housing next to those workplaces. Our hotel and lodging and tourism economy here relies on those workers. And, if they live on the beach next to the hotel they live in and they can walk to the hotel they live in and not need a car, we're also accomplishing other, priorities of the county of having walkable opportunities and being less reliant on using the car to go across the county to your workplace. So I just want to point that out. And Barbara, you might not be so aware of that predicament of the service workers. And if they can live on the beach and work on the beach, then that's a win-win, right?
Thank you, Mayor Levy. Councilmember Horland, is that a question, by the way, before?
I don't know if that's a question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think the answer is yes. I mean, obviously, there's a benefit to them living and working.
Sure, and
next
we
to-
talk about this often, in our interaction with the MPO, is moving workers anywhere throughout the county, but especially to the beach.
And we do, and I think, and Mayor Levy makes some excellent points, but I know this was a vigorous discussion, and when we're planning in our municipalities, we always tend to look at, how our employees in the city are going to be able to have access to their jobs. But I think the discussion that we've had with this planning council is, again, in protecting the resiliency of the Barrier Islands. So I would support staff's recommendation, and I think it was a recommendation of this council not to, especially when we're looking at live local legislation, promote the affordable housing aspect on the Barrier Islands.
Further thoughts on that? Thank you.
Listen, I know there could be difference of opinion, but I don't see a reason why you won't, something's wrong with having affordable units on the beach. So I don't think we should have policies that necessarily, exclude that unless I'm not following the section correctly.
So the
Ms.
intent
Blake-Boyd.
is, I'm tying it to the, two things. I'm tying it to the other affordable housing incentives we have that exclude the east of the Intracoastal Waterway, which is the Geller policy, the community uses, so structuring it similar to that. I think my professional opinion is I don't think that this is a positive permitted use within recreation and open space lands. I don't believe that.
That's not what I'm referring
This is
to.
this is moved forward at the steering committee, so I'm just expressing my professional opinion. I don't think that this is a positive change that, opens up, but that's okay, because I understand policy direction. So my opinion is that it should be, if it's going to move forward, it should move forward with how the other incentives have moved forward. That
And
is
just to
my-
clarify, I wasn't referring to like the community and the open space
Okay.
lands, and maybe that's,
That's specific to this. That is.
yeah,
recreation open
maybe I didn't follow what we were talking about. I was just talking more generally.
Okay,
Yeah, there are locations within Broward County that are currently recreation, open space, and parks that are highly underutilized. There are corners involving acres that that could serve as affordable dwellings within an environment that is perfectly located for a higher and better use, and it doesn't hurt the park system or the open space system in any way. And I just think that we have to be. I'm not selling that, but I don't think we should exclude it. I think that.
Wait, exclude which? Sorry, I'm just asking for
The-
clarification.
The trade-off, where a city or the county determine that it's possible. I just don't.
Yes, so it is included.
I could name
It
examples
is
if you want,
included,
but
it is included in the
Right.
permitted uses, it is included in the
Right.
update. The refinement that the staff was asking for today was to exclude east of the intercoastal waterway to be consistent with the other incentives
and
they're
I
serving.
agree. There's no reason to exclude it in any part of the county.
Barbara, where's the language that you're referring to? I'm just a little lost here. Sorry.
So, under,
Yeah, permitted uses section,
we didn't include the entire, because I was trying to keep it streamlined. So the recreation open space, it's on page 2.
Page 2.
So tab permitted uses, page 2. There's no language in here because that's what we realized was missing to be consistent with the other incentives.
So again, just to be clear, I agree with staff's recommendation that the east of the intercoastal should be excluded from the open recreation, because we did have the discussion.
Yep.
And I think we all agree that
We're
we
good.
should look at those open recreation areas. I just don't believe that we
Well-
should be doing that on the Barrier Island.
I think we have a couple members of our steering committee that feel like we should not put an exclusion of the Barrier Island. Is that correct, Mayor Castillo, Mayor Levy? You believe that?
look, it's a very limited situation, and it's
It's
not really, likely, I think,
Very unlikely.
to be,
It is highly unlikely.
Situation.
I don't know why making the change would add any value, but okay, whatever.
It's just to make it consistent with all the other incentive programs that are there. That's the reason we're doing it. They're suggesting that, to make it consistent. I don't have a problem with it for the exact reasons Mayor Levy just stated, and it's just making it consistent. So,
I mean, Pembroke Pines isn't scheduled to be a barrier island for the next- until, I think it's 20, I think it's the next 80,
34, I think.
I think it's 18
I think
months.
80 years.
Chair, can I just add a couple quick points?
Absolutely.
Because I really am struck by this idea that there's so many people working in service jobs along the beach, where there's just thousands and thousands of jobs. They live in Lauderhill and Coral Springs and Tamarack, Miramar, and other places. It's a long way to get there. Live Local has a really, really tremendous opportunity to help with that. And I'll point to the Galleria. 1,500 workforce housing units are planned in the Galleria Mall, which is a block from the Intercoastal, right on top of at least the Fort Lauderdale Strip, where you can imagine teachers that work in any of my schools or folks working there have a better chance of living closer to their jobs. And to me, every once in a while, some of these things have either silver linings or positive direct impacts on what's going on. I don't know about the 4,000 units that are going into the Galleria with 9 30-story pillars. I'll learn more about it, but I am really satisfied that 1,500 units. Second, we're closing 7 schools this year. We're moving our headquarters. We're moving to Ms. Horland's city, because that's actually the center of Broward County, last I checked. And things like that help with transportation. You're talking thousands of jobs moving to Plantation, what is now Plantation Middle School. And you're talking about 5 of those 7 schools are thinking about some form of housing, either mixed use or heavy residential. We're also changing one of our former education centers in Pompano, right down the street from Chair DeGiorgio's house. The 96 houses, 100% workforce and 100% reserved for Broward County school teachers and other people that work. So there's a lot of things going on between the schools and Live Local that's going to have a pretty big impact. I think that takes the pressure off wanting to do more of these things on the beach, where just economically it's very, very difficult to do. And so I just want to put kind of all those pieces together. Those are some relatively big tiles in this overall mosaic, that there are some places where we're actually seeing progress that will reduce the pressure on the Barrier Island.
Thank you, Dr. Zim. Ms. Blakeboy.
So that's it really for permitted uses. This is really all grayed out. You'd already agreed to those. In the recommended practices section, I think we can quickly just go through these. It's the same idea that we had in the policies section, where if it opens up the policy to review, we need to maintain it, hold it in abeyance. So I would make that
Maintain what
same
we have currently
recommendation.
and hold the rest in abeyance.
Correct.
Yes.
Then the final item for today, structurally within the plan, is related to the highlighted regional issues, which is included in the materials. And I just want to give you a little background on highlighted regional issues. Were developed in 2017 and adopted as part of the plan. And it was because we had holistically redone the entire plan, and it was supposed to be this idea of where residents could go, or, interested parties, to see what was important to the county. You see the policies, each of the top 7 topics here. Heavy weighing on resiliency and natural resource protection, housing affordability, disaster planning, multimodal governmental partnership. Staff's, through different eyes with thinking about Senate Bill 180, the idea is, I think the time has passed for this highlighted regional issues section, because the strategies repeat what is in the policies section. So it's actually created a redundant system where if you're amending one place, you have to amend the other. And I think it's time to eliminate the highlighted regional issue from the plan, just develop a narrative that's a support document that covers these topics, and move forward that way, because it eliminates the redundancy. First of all, it was a great idea, right? You can just read these like 25 pages and see really what's in the rest of these 100. But at the end of the day, I think it served its time, and the policies and the permitted uses in the plan stands on its own, and that's where we really should be focused for this. So I think some sort of support document that doesn't get adopted, that's our recommendation from staff's perspective. Because as we went through and started editing it and seeing really what it was creating, like
Makes
I said,
sense.
it served its time. Okay.
Perfect sense.
So with that, so the support documents that are in your backup, there's always the public comments ongoing. We've been receiving them throughout the past several months. And really, what are our next steps? And the next steps are, staff would like to proceed with the version, basically, the phase that we talked about today.
With the one
creating-
change.
Yes, with 2 changes. There's 2
changes, yes.
changes. And then drafting, we'll work on the next couple of months, a highlighted regional issue narrative, but propose that for deletion. And then creating and sharing this document for these policies to be held in abeyance. And I even thought of a title for it, for the narrative. Oh, Prepared for Progress, because we were talking about,
Boom, there you go.
so when you were talking about that, I thought that's a great idea, right? Because this is the progress that we're
big
talking
weekend for
about
you.
for the future, so we'll be prepared for progress. So that's kind of what we'll call those abeyance policies.
it's a great idea.
Oh, no, not progress.
Well, let's remember also that SB 180 expires like in 2028 unless something is.
2027, right, unless you have a
2027,
1 year.
so we're in a
Unless there's
3-year
another
situation.
storm.
Or the
Oh,
last
unless you
2
have a storm.
years.
Yeah, so maybe they let it phase out if nothing happens in the interim, but.
So what we'd like, just real quick timing wise, I talked to the AV staff this morning about the public workshops. So we will be holding those probably in this room or 422, and they'll be, in person or virtual. And we'll hold at least one of them in the evening hours for people to be able to participate, that this isn't their every day job. And the timing for that looks like probably the 2nd or 3rd week of December. No, sorry, the 1st or 2nd week of December, and then a second workshop the 2nd or 3rd week of January for that. And then we would be able to give you an update at your January meeting, and we'd be preparing, getting closer to a public hearing date for you, the Planning Council, to make a recommendation on transmittal.
Excellent. That's really great. And I do want to commend this. It's really hard what you all had to do from our spring meeting. I mean, you guys did a phenomenal job. I agree, Dr. Zimmerman. It's really hard work because we got thrown that wrench right in the middle of it. We were moving along. We had some great recommendations. And I want to commend this committee for a robust conversation today, a really thoughtful conversation, because it's important. The resiliency is a big deal for us, and we don't want to let anyone think that we're not concerned or concentrating on that. So I appreciate what you're going to do. I think we need to be as transparent as possible with our website and get everything on there, explain what we're doing, how we're doing it, what's going to be next, so people will have it before the workshops. And we need to do exactly what Councilmember Horland said, is spread the word. Talk to everybody we can about what we're doing here, why we feel there may be some issues with SB 180, how we understand it, but we think it can be done better if we do X, Y, and Z. So
And
with
I'll
that-
send the article that Councilmember Horland sent me to this morning. I'll share it. I'll just share it with the entire planning council in the next update so that you have that perhaps as like, see, even the,
Even the author of the bill.
right, thinks that it needs it.
That's great.
Okay.
So without exception, we'd like to move forward with the path that's laid out in front of you. Is that okay? So without exception, you have that direction. Excellent job, staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any other items for today?
For the record, that's a unanimous vote. Andy just
For
said.
the record, that's a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Excellent. Do
Thanks,
we have any
everyone.
other items
That
today?
could conclude. I'll see all of you next Thursday.
With that, that's a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I was getting cold.